Rio. You got enough to worry about. Stop worrying about Harry. Don't you get it. Nobody's talked to you. Ready? You still have tomorrow to eat dinner.
Quite so.
I'll see you then.
You most certainly will.
Take care, Tony. You too. Bye.
I'm encountering the same phenomenon. Well, I'm finishing my shift. Is it convenient breathing?
I've only touched on what George is like as an employee. Ed said that's all he wanted. It's fine. I really do think he has lessons about Bexhill Farm. It's a hard work with him. And it's not He's comfortable in his own initiative. Yes. No. The reference is just from me. Look. I can't excuse what George doing. What Alex is doing is terrible. Why was I also so Philip? He also acknowledged and of course there needs to be punishment, but there has to be redemption too. It was the right thing to do. It's not the right thing. None of this is when Robert told me enormous transformation. Still, I've learned later Shall I begin? Those three counted.
I would go for investigation of an alternative. Maybe if you could move your laptop over. I've sketched a plan of the village hall identifying all points of access.
Oh, this is marvelous.
Well, sadly, the only thing I was able to establish is that other than the front entrance and the kitchen, which we have The other doors and windows were secured unmolested. Perhaps we need to return to the scene of the crime. No unexpected control. Come on.
Not at all. If anything, Emily, you could do me a favour. Yes, I discussed it with her earlier, and she agrees we desperately need more help. Well, I'd have to visit Emma's tree schedule, but I'm sure we can work that out. If that's okay with you, then thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. Of course, it will only be able to carry it back. I know. Until then, would you be able to start tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I don't see why not. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure you'll be soon. We'll see you then.
Once again, Pat is so grateful.
Yeah, and not just for the job offer, but George's efforts as well.
Like I said, every counts.
Yeah, bye. It's true. Just knowing there's somebody who understands what it's like. You know, it's not
Because it does mean that we're going to have to go It's him.
what do you mean?
It's the trailer.
It's something made. I'm actually really pleased to spend time with Miss Field to distract each other. It's just better that than instead sitting on the table.
You've done it. Just stop.
Obviously, didn't listen to me.
Listen, I know how you feel. She went ahead.
Wrote George a reference anyway.
I know it. Put your name, Tom's, or Lily's. Next time, I think what I thought was right.
Right.
Yes.
What's right about speaking up and helping? It's wicked.
So George isn't a wicked.
Isn't he?
No. We know what a genuinely wicked person looks like, and George is a far cry from that.
Don't expect me to defend you to the rest of the family. Brian and Ian, they won't be happy when they find out. You're going to explain it. You were the first to arrive. It's an obligation. The unlocked door and face savings. What time did you do? You notice anything unusual? How's it made? Take yourself to where you first entered. Try your best to recall.
Does it does matter? Chairs are stacked neatly, tables are full of ornaments on them. As you know, we want precise instructions. The bonsai club, they were largely unusable, married Besides, they couldn't have known which table the fruit pies would be displayed.
Which begs the question, who did?
With the help of
table was it?
I didn't even realize. Honestly,
Like this one here?
yes, really.
Well, let's see.
To even entertain the idea of members organizing a Sesame Street, it would undermine the whole ethos of the Brown and Tony show. Why the two have under very difficult tasks without owning them?
Linda,
They would deserve nothing less than the condemnation entirely.
have you seen this? On the bottom of the table?
No, what's that?
Take a look. You're quite certain you didn't notice it before.
I followed the instructions on my goodness. I don't think. Well, could that be what happened?
I'm very much afraid it could.
There's an emotional confession and Ed attempts to hold everything together. Turned to Project 7 Central Intelligence or Dominic's Dominican Catral unveils a plan to fight communism in Europe by turning the Farmers into an elite criminal squad. It is the intelligence watching tonight. It's coming up after this.
Dickensian on BBC Radio 4.
Is what he wanted. Nothing but facts. Education without imagination.
Without rights, without love.
Could be hard times.
Besides,
I never made pretense that I loved him.
It would make a man ridiculous. A new season of Dickensian dramas, beginning with a sharp satire starring David Nixon. And now, it's not even more serious attention.
Dickensian.
Radio 4 honeypots, Invasion Day, and a plan to fight communism in Europe. This is Central Intelligence, the inside story of the CIA, starring Control, Ed Harris, and John isolate the Allied community in West Berlin, which sat like an island in Soviet-controlled East Germany.
The Russian blockade collapsed transportation. The people won. The Russian blockade brought darkness to the city. The people got used to candlelight.
With Berlin being strangled, Richard Helms once again sought advice from the man who'd set out the blueprint for CIA. It wasn't, at the moment, enough.
Thanks for sparing the time.
Of course, Dick. My pleasure.
Alan Davis.
Following news.
Will has it's hardly surprised.
Really? We were surprised.
Oh, come on.
Oh, really? We just thought if we
I see.
created a new currency backed by our banks, it would stabilize the West German economy.
Whose bright idea was that? It was Frank's, wasn't it?
The Deutschmark actually had been Frank's idea.
If I know Frank, what he really thought was Red Russia's control of East Germany by getting all the East Berliners to take the Western back to business. Right?
It was. And they had. But unfortunately, Russia didn't capitulate. Instead, a mere 3 years after the end of World War II, we were suddenly on the verge of World War III. I'm Eloise Page, and you're listening to Central Intelligence, my life inside the CIA. Episode 3.
Attacked us on September 11th, 2001.
Peace and stability cannot prevail.
To reinforce the rule of law.
strong manic genius curled up in a fetal position in a foam mattress. That was Frank's response.
So now we're in a global crisis. Truman can't lose face by backing down.
Well, we think he's the answer in air.
Airlift? He's going to fly supplies into West Berlin. We hope the Russians don't start shooting our planes down.
Apparently.
Holy moly, what do the Russians think? They know that's an option.
That's what Truman wants to know. But we still can't get inside the Kremlin. Now it's serious and urgent. If we, the CIA, run upon reliable sources of intelligence, Russian intentions, Truman can get to the
What about Reinhold Beck?
Gavin, there is head of intelligence on the Eastern Front, who Richard will have recruited from a POW prison center unit.
The Russians got inside Israel a few months ago. We can't trust any of their reports now.
But Berlin's still a mixing.
Technically split into sectors, but barriers are fluid. And the Russian army does have some high-ranking officers, though, so yes, we know that's our best chance. We can somehow recruit one of them.
Money?
No, doesn't work.
Blackmail.
Can't find the leverage.
Maybe someone's annoyed with missing a promotion.
Yeah, we tried all that.
Honeypot?
Well, you couldn't use an American girl, that would be far too obvious.
So use a German girl. Who's our chief of station there?
At the Berlin desk, Tom Poland.
Well, tell Tom he has to find one free-spirited Fraulein who's happy to target a Russian officer, unzip her dress, and get him talking. There's his.
On the train back to Washington, Richard wondered if it really was the answer, given our urgent time frame. Honeypots had been around as long as blockades, but they still have to be trained. And only a certain type of woman can embrace that task with the right level of relish.
Can you give to Tom Poland this paper?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. Several times. And Tom agrees. There's just no time to prepare something properly.
Where is that?
Well, I told him to ask all the women in his Berlin office if they knew anyone who was already involved with a Russian officer. I thought if we found a girl in a real relationship, that'd save the time we can't afford on finding and training a girl who had to pretend.
Think?
And it turns out his secretary's younger sister is in love with a colonel in the military police.
Russian?
Yes.
And she's gonna pass on her sister everyone can tell, right?
No. He's sworn her to secrecy, and she loves him so much she's following orders. But luckily, they're having trouble finding a place where they can meet in private.
Lucky because...
Tom can bug his own apartment and tell the secretary her sister can have her own weekend. She'll make up some story, so her sister and the colonel won't suspect anything. Then she'll just idly chat to her about the blockade, plant that in her mind, and Tom will just record whatever the two lovers say and get the tape back to us. That's the paperwork for all completed.
Page. Highly commendable fiction.
And in a few short days, the first tapes were on their way back across the Atlantic. We just stayed calm and prayed it would be useful. Richard was going to translate, and I would type up the transcript.
My God, it's been so long. Come here, my big, strong man. No, no, now. Take me now.
What?
I want your cock inside me. You're my heat. Each I saved my juices for.
Nice weekend, Mr. Holmes?
Very pleasant. You?
Lovely. We did Noah's Ark at Sunday school. I had to explain to 7-year-olds why we had to round up to everything.
Shall we roll it forward a little?
Thank you.
What? Big things on fire. Yes. Now?
From the depths of despair to the heights of ecstasy. That was Frank Wisdom. An inner entity enlarging on anyone.
What about Paris? What's happening?
Well, we obtained a covert recording of the Russian colonel talking to the German and saying, big things are afoot. How big? Big. Soon, we will all eat them. The Kremlin has a long-range plan, and by the middle of 52, everything will be back.
52.
That's what they want. They don't want to invade until we take their own. We gotta smash these bastards. Stalin's already taken half of Europe. He's strangling Berlin as we speak. Why wait? Let's go through and get tell we have the conquer. We have to hold Russian land before they invade us. First, we need some troops back. Then we'll just wait. You can't just leave it. Things are not the rest. She's not in the election. And that's not just America. There's still 700,000 refugees in the city. Well, it's not. We worked with the French resistance all through the war. And the Yugoslav resistance, Polish resistance. We can do it, Billy. I mean, Ed. So, you're the rent. Just issue your. Into the rest.
The second take on the 22nd to 23rd of next week.
How long will you be gone? They are saying 6 months. No.
Yes,
Don't think they want it. You can build it fast.
What are the Russians building on the road? That's all they know. These ideas are the focus of the war since the war. Control back over collection reports, far from the
In return for rescuing their economy, Albania is going to let Stalin build a base right there. Away from India, Tommy weapons and date from France. That's invasion. That's what this is all about. MI6 is Albanian exiles in that dictator. They want us to help them up to speed with the events and the back to overthrow the government. Just now, he made the money. At least I'm spending it on something worthwhile. Attacking the nation right at the border. We are. That's the point. This is all hidden from them. We've got to stop it. We beat Russia and Albania. Using Albanians. Russia will never recover.
Of course, Admiral Hill was one thing. Next, Frank had to get his plan past the new watchdogs at the State Department and the Pentagon.
Mr. Wicker,
Yep.
Logo Chiefs are expected. In here.
He strode in all fired up and ready to argue. But when State and the Pentagon suddenly realized our charter gave us the authority to run this operation, whatever they thought, and all their minutes could be subpoenaed by Congress at any time, they were too scared to get involved at all. And Frank returned to CIA in exultant triumph.
Here, Miss Page, come in. Look, close the door.
What is it?
We've done it. They proved it better. They went to jelly and didn't want to know about it. The Office of Policy Coordination doesn't have to answer to anyone anymore.
That's amazing.
Congratulations. Being unaccountable doesn't mean we shouldn't still be as careful and circumspect as possible. Circumspect? Go to hell.
Frank.
Sorry. I forgot. I know, Miss Page. But don't ever call me circumspect. That's for sissies. Where's a drink? Let's have a drink. Then we've got to get to work. Our top priority now is finding someone who can take a bunch of half-starved, illiterate Albanian farmers and turn them into a crack force for new commandos.
Seriously?
Anyone springs to mind? No. Do we even have any elite commandos here on staff at the moment?
Actually, yes. We do.
In fact, this person had one of the most impressive records in espionage anywhere.
I believe you were asking.
This is Virginia Hall, a pioneer secret agent in World War II. Proficient in documents, expert with awareness, intelligent, exacting, cautious, brave, an amputee, and a lover.
Nice to see you again. And you, Virginia. Come, and I'll introduce you to Mr. Wilson.
Miss Hall,
Right?
please in your
Yes. And I'm saying in all these
request also says you arranged the jailbreak and safe passage to England with 12 key members of the French resistance. Undertook successful sabotage ops in your own house. Fomented anti-Nazi opposition in Vienna. And you're on staff. Yeah.
You only just realized.
Well, you know it's hard to keep track of everything. What have we had to do?
Sitting behind the desk.
Because of your FK.
But considering I've never escaped the Gestapo by walking 100 miles over the Pyrenees into Spain during midwinter, I'd rather think I'm behind the desk because I'm in China. So,
With Virginia Hall in place, the next priority was vetting her counterpart from England, just to be safe.
Mr. Humphrey, Mr. Ingleton, remember
The one where we upheld democracy by bribing the Catholic clergy.
Greetings, Dick.
This had been our man on the ground in Rome, James Jesus Egerton, who was now back in Washington and head of counterintelligence.
I've been in touch with Kim Philby in London. We're vetting a few names the British Army put forward. So you'd be a good man from their side for the Albania mission.
You know Philby?
Of course. You?
No, not at all. He's one of the names MI6 is shortlisted for the next Washington Chief of Bureau. They've invited us to make front choice.
Well, if it's our choice, it has to be Philby. Cambridge, Foreign Office, Secret Service, best in the business. I admire him enormously. You'll like him too, Dick. You also have a message of us.
Coming late.
That train from New York said the worst scotch money shouldn't buy.
We contracted 10 articles. They stocked over dozens.
Excellent.
No two spies better symbolize the closeness of Anglo-American intelligence, James Jesus Egerton and Kim Philby. Their relationship was built on the divine trinity of trust,
Accidental joy, I suppose.
poetry,
I grow old, I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers. TSA.
and appetite.
We have the whole afternoon, yes?
At least Richard, God bless, never would be on the third glass. There was something else the two of us shared, along with the fervent hope of one day seeing Mr. Alan Dulles back in the great game.
How are things at the office?
And I touched it. Frank has carte blanche, which is both good and interesting. The Albania plan is full steam ahead.
You don't sound wildly enthusiastic.
I just wonder if he's not rushing things a little. Virginia Hall's over there now.
Yes, I've heard about her. Quite a force of nature, I believe. She does.
In Malta, Virginia was asking herself the same question. And given she'd been trying to explain how to assemble a radio to Albanian refugees, they couldn't even understand English. It was time for some home truths until Philby approved British counterpart.
Colonel Smiley?
We've got our Martin, please. The fixes are on.
Thank you. Sir, they are not. I've only covered a third. They've just seen radio. Their combat skills are poor. Yes, they would.
This is a covert mission. The entities may contact with insurgents and radio band.
Which requires traversing territory controlled by communist forces, and they're not soldiers. I would like the operation delayed.
I beg your pardon.
They need more time.
These young men are too close. They have a burning governments are liars. But I have no intention of letting mine die.
Nor I mine. I'm sending a cable.
When did this occur?
Overnight.
So what's her problem? They haven't quite reached the limit. They're not supposed to.
But Miss Hall says that in some areas they simply haven't achieved the required level of competence.
But according to Smiley, she's done a great job. They can handle a weapon, operate a radio. But Frank, if Virginia doesn't think they're ready, no one's ever ready. It's like saying what's the best time to have a baby. There's never a best time. You just do it and make it work. The point is, they're ready enough.
information.
I'm calling. Miss Page, can you please inform Miss Hall we cannot afford to wait? The Albanians will come. I'm sure she's done a first-class job.
It's your call.
That's right, Miss Page. It is.
Stymied by official orders from both countries, they didn't have any choice. At sunset, on the covered waters, a whole gang of former Albanian farmers and tractor workers were bundled into a small fishing boat.
Good luck. You'll be fine.
Their mission was to overthrow communism in their homeland and strike a death blow to Soviet ambitions throughout the whole of Europe. Nobody liked them. Virginia knew they'd make landfall in the early pre-dawn hours. And their first task was to reach the village of Horn and contact other anti-communist sympathizers. When they had done that, they were to assemble their radio and make contact with them in Martin. While Virginia waited, this motley group of trained ideas approached Horn.
My Armagati.
They were all killed within an hour of landing on Albanian soil. It was the most disastrous result a covert operation could possibly suffer. Until the next one. In his report to the head of MI6, Colonel Smiley officially described the operation as disappointing. But what I wanted to know was, how did the Russians know who were coming?
In Central Intelligence Episode 3, Eloise Page is played by Kim Cattrall, Alan Dulles, Ed Harris, Richard Helms, Johnny Flynn, Frank Wisner, Jeffrey Aaron, young Eloise Page by me, Ella Medaglia, Virginia Hall by Jennifer Armour, James Jesus Angleton, Philip DeMello, Rufus Wright, Paris Miller, Wayne Phillips, Admiral Lee. Music is by Sasha Putnam. It is produced by Emma Hearn and directed by John Scott Wright. A Gold Hawk production for BBC Radio 4.
Central Intelligence continues at the same time next week. In an hour's time, our short-worked short story Rainbow is a presentation on inclusion in the workplace, which doesn't go to plan. That's anti-cultural. Next, though, on Radio 4, we've got another experiment with Barry for you. That's another role through Lucy Worsley.
After Lady Killers, come Swindlers.
I am the notorious Tilly Devine.
Search for Missing Luke, a brand new series from Lucy Worsley.
Welcome to the world of thieves and hoaxers and con women.
They wanted better lives. They wanted opportunities.
Investigating infamous women from the past.
I have more diamonds than the Queen of England.
Come read me the riddle of Miss Caribou.
Lady Swindlers with Lucy Worsley.
I am shocked and appalled.
You're not though, are you?
Starting this Monday at 3:30 on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
Now, another chance to hear the first series of Barry, investigating one of the biggest environment crimes in UK history. Today, Dan Ashby and Lucy Tate travel to the home of Italy's most notorious waste mafia and learn how the UK is playing a dangerous game.
We're sitting on the terrace of a cafe in Naples, Southerners, wedged in next to a stream of mopeds, fruit and veg vans with formidable loud tables. This neighbourhood is the local stronghold of the Camorra, one of the most notorious mafias. We've come to Italy to see what happens when waste crime gets out of control. We're here with a man who's lived here all his life, and he's telling us about a day that people here won't forget. Our Italian producer Savio is translating.
So there was this one day in particular, it was in the middle of summer, and he remembers that there were a few fires that were so powerful that people had to leave their houses covering their faces, covering their mouths to avoid inhaling the toxic waste. He said it seemed like a war scene. It seemed like a scene out of a war.
Like a war scene, but there was no war. Instead of the fires, the crisis created by the Camorra. Those fires were burning pyres of waste. It's a warning to the UK of what happens when a mafia is allowed to go unchecked. But are we listening? We're Dan Ashby and Lucy Taylor, and from BBC Radio 4, this is Buried, the story of one of the biggest environment crimes in UK history, and a growing criminal underworld. Episode 7, How to Make It a Mafia.
Smells nice.
It smells
Pastries.
Oh, Italian.
I'm really sorry. Our episode in Italy starts with Dan trying to model a cappuccino.
What's recommended, espresso o cappuccino?
Dipende, sono due cose completamente diverse. Io take both.
Eventually, we get coffee and sit down again with Mauro. The funny thing is that he looks like the stereotypical Italian gangster. Brown blazer, open shirt, a slither of chest, a silver chain. But he's actually more like the anti-mafia, a photographer and activist who happened to grow up here in Caivano, right among the Camorra. And the stuff you imagine the mafia do, then do it all.
One of the biggest moneymakers was taking over waste collection. Only instead of processing the rubbish, they buried it illegally all around this region. Their landfills were so toxic, often they began catching alive. The people here renamed their own region the Land of Fires. Again, our producer Savvy translates for
It was impossible to not notice that there was something going on in this territory, whether it was constantly columns of smoke coming out of the countryside. At night you would smell all different kinds of things burning, plastics, other materials, and so it was impossible not to notice what was happening. In the summer here it's very hot, and so the only way to cool down the apartments is to open the window or the door. But if they opened the window of the door, they would be inundated with this smoke and this horrible toxic smell. If they kept the door closed, it would be an extremely uncomfortable situation. And so in that period, he just felt anger for the people that had to go through that.
It's a snapshot of what happens when the mafia go unchecked. They filled up so many landfills illegally that legitimate operators had nowhere to take their rubbish. And then mountains of waste began building up on Naples streets.
It was a very difficult situation to live in, that sometimes in the street it would smell so bad, and occasionally the garbage would be stacked up to the first floor of the building. The smell was awful, it was almost unlivable.
What are the other systemic things that allow this to happen in Naples? Is it, failure of authority, regulation? Is there any other things that he would like to highlight that we can learn from?
He says the institutions didn't do anything to make sure that laws and rules were in head. He said that maybe one person closed their eyes and that's kind of started this vicious cycle of ignoring what the problem was.
Accusations of laws being flouted, public bodies struggling, sound familiar?
We've come to Naples to see how this extreme example compares to the case that sparked this all off for us, the illegal dump at Mavoy near Londonderry in Northern Ireland. We say goodbye to Mauro and head out to the outstretches of Naples. Our producer, Savvy, has something to show us. The pink blocks of apartments fall away, and there's the odd farm field or grass plain. And then we're rolling up to what was the Camorra's biggest illegal dump.
What do you see there?
Oh, is it?
Just there on the French dumped on the side of the road.
There are lots of rubbish bags piled up by the side of the road. But beyond that, through the tall white hoardings, we can see where the main dump used to be. It's overgrown with grass now, so at a glance, they could be any green fields. You can see that the ground is lumpy and is piled up into mounds. There's definitely something under there. Before we get out, our producer, Savvy, wants to check with the guard. Security here is tight because the government seized the site from the mafia.
Let's get the verdict.
I said we can make observations from the streets, but there's nobody to talk to inside.
Our driver points behind us to some murals in memory of an Italian reporter.
He was killed by mafia. A journalist on the radio.
So I think these guys are really for journalism.
Drive a few minutes down the road, jump out to the spotlight on the road.
So do you think all of that mound there, all the way back there, do you think is the pollution?
Yes, I mean, all of these things in the field, you can see a little bit of yellow trees in there. All of these are the kind of the type of things maybe it isn't really anything like the line that's 30 meters down.
Even that myself is a bit shocking, like 20 metres down from here. It's crazy, my family research saw this on the islands in a completely different place, but in the same sort of location, just like the major city, the same sort of scale. Just crazy to think about, just replicating stuff over and over again, too.
And the weird thing about that is not that they copied this. I don't think it's that they knew this and they copied the model. It's just that the model makes so much sense. It's happening in the modern world. It's all self-evident. UK illegal dumps that look like Italian ones. Organised crime across the UK that's growing just like it did in Italy. And a mess of failed regulations and law buckling under the mountains of our waste. Sound familiar? Being in Naples, all of this feels so much more present.
So say, as this series goes on, I'm just getting more and more angry at what's happening with this.
I think for years we thought that it's the mafia that is causing toxic waste, illegal waste to grow. When actually, listening to this, I'm starting to wonder whether it's our waste that is making the mafia.
There's someone who can help us with that. Sergio Nazaro is an advisor to the Italian Anti-Mafia Parliamentary Commission. We called him, and he's actually invited us to a former mobster's estate the government has handed back to the community. We're not even out of the car, and he's dragging us towards lunch.
You decide if you want to sit down and try it inside.
We dive into a beautiful open hall packed with ex-mafia men tucking into risotto, former drug traffickers and hard men who now run a farm shop and kitchen and make a preemptive decision. When it comes to the food, I won't complain.
Look at this.
The bread is local, and the humour too.
A little piece of bread.
This is the Boston bread?
Or what do you think it's from London? Jesus Christ. That's it. After this, there is nothing that you can put bread. I know. You are traffic. Just about it's not the
Whether it's teasing, taking on the mafia, or just talking, Sergio is relentless. But you can tell he does this estate is just a little piece of hope for him. We walk out into the courtyards and farmland surrounding the villa, where they rehabilitated ex-gangsters and given them a new life. We're on Via the Mafia.
Yeah, la mafia, this is a nice joke because this means like go away, mafia, you know. That means street but also go away. This belongs to Mocha clan.
people that knows about Afghanistan. With one of the biggest, they're real business people.
Willing to kill people?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely yes. It's one of the most dangerous because they use extreme violence in their new business.
Unfortunately, we're not here to talk about how Italy took on the mafia. We want to know if the UK could get a mafia of its own. We know there's organised crime in the UK. We know it's growing. Is it possible there could one day be a mafia, or even now be mafia in the UK?
That's finally a right question. If you have an organized crime group that spend a lot of money, we're talking about 100 million euros, they can buy everything. And if you buy part of the institution, then you begin to move. Here comes the opposite, because you cut a part of the money already going. And you never stop. With mafia, it's never over.
I think people in the UK, when they think of the mafia, they think of drugs and they think of guns, but is the truth of waste, rubbish, is the real money?
It's one of the real money. But 6 years ago, it was just like, don't show me yeah, that's right. And so, the magic was to transform the everyday waste people.
And that's the big difference, isn't it, between cocaine and waste. Waste, they pay you to take it away. You're not investing any money. Someone pays you to do it.
Bravissimo. Bravissimo. Right? Right like that. You are needed. Stress, weight, and control for it. You could overthrow a major, a politician, a full government. Because you had stress on the first, second, third floor for 1 month. You have civil war. You have no parliament. You have a civil war. You have no idea. It's hell on earth.
In total, the Camorra dumped 10 million tons of waste in this region. Eventually, the government, special services and police fought back and shut them down. The fires have stopped, but the waste is still there. Just like it is in England, and of course in Maboy Road in Northern Ireland. Before we go, there's one last warning. Sergio said the only reason it was all stopped was because people started noticing something strange.
Little child died at either 1, 2 years old and so on.
Next time, a campaign to get the world to listen. Did children in Italy start dying because of dumps?
When I found out, when I made the connection, I was filled with rage.
We travelled to the mafia's home neighbourhood.
Our Italian team really noticed things a bit different, a little bit more, you say on edge, but just a bit more careful.
To meet the priest who's confronting them and wants the world to know what's at risk.
If they're not going to listen to the screams of the living, maybe they're going to listen to the screams of the dead.
Buried is written and produced by Dan Ashby and Lucy Taylor and is a Smoke Trail production for BBC Radio 4.
Buried continues at the same time next week. You're listening to BBC Radio 4 in a couple of minutes. Mealybugs on cacti, produce from a floating garden and gardening for patients receiving chemotherapy. All under discussion when Gardener's Question Time is from Uxbridge. That's after the news and a look ahead to a new series starting next Tuesday afternoon.
Submerge yourself in an exploration of surrealism. BBC Radio 4 with me, Russell Tovey, actor and art enthusiast.
Surrealism has been called the special effects department of psychoanalysis. It gives us an image of how we dream and it gives us an image of the unconscious.
Where did this mind-bending movement come from? And how has it entered everyday life to become more relevant than ever?
It's the idea that there's something going on in your mind of which you are not aware, but is actually hugely important and influential.
Surrealism Remixed on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Starts this Tuesday afternoon at 4.
BBC News at 3 o'clock. In the past hour, it's been announced that the celebrated actress Dame Maggie Smith has died. She was 89. During a 70-year career on stage and screen, she won 2 Oscars in 1969 and 1978. She went on to win a new generation of fans as Professor McGonagall in the Harry Potter films and as the Duchess of Grantham in Downton Abbey. Katie Razzle looks back at her life.
Maggie Smith won an Oscar for her portrayal of a maverick teacher in 1930s Edinburgh, in the prime of Miss Jane Brodie.
I am in the business of putting all depends on young children.
It was the first of 2 Academy Awards, the second for California Suite. She was already an accomplished classical actress, but she had a particular genius for comedy. A younger generation knew her as Professor McGonagall in the Harry Potter films.
Now, today we will be transforming animals into what though?
And as the Dowager Duchess of Grantham in Downton Abbey, mistress of the devastating put-down.
When I'm with her, I'm reminded of the virtues of the English.
Isn't she American?
Exactly.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has begun addressing the United Nations General Assembly as Israel and Hezbollah continue to trade fire across the Lebanese border. Mr. Netanyahu told the UN that since the October the 7th attacks by Hamas last year, Israel had been forced to defend itself on many fronts.
The curse of October 7th began when Hamas invaded Israel from Gaza, but it didn't end there. Israel was soon forced to defend itself on 6 more war fronts organized by Iran. On October 8th, Hezbollah attacked us from Lebanon. Since then, they fired over 8,000 rockets at our towns and cities.
2 boys who were just 12 when they murdered a young man with a machete in Wolverhampton last year have been handed life sentences with a minimum term of 8.5 years. Nottingham Crown Court was told they carried out a vicious attack on Sean Cesarhigh in a park. BBC News.
Now on Radio 4, Kathy Clugston is underground in Uxbridge. This week's Gardener's Question.
Hello and welcome to Gardener's Question Time. I'm on secret manoeuvres this week, deep underground in Uxbridge in West London. I have descended 76 steps, and around me is a collection of rooms that holds a very special place in history. In the room I'm standing in right now, top secret operational decisions were made concerning the brave RAF pilots keeping the Luftwaffe at bay in 1940. The rooms making up the Battle of Britain bunker are now a museum 60 feet under. What a prime location for horticulture, you might be thinking. But in fact, plants did have a close relationship with this underground bunker. Evidence from a German reconnaissance photo shows a copse of native British trees in this exact spot, and the trees are still here today. The all-important secrecy was maintained by trailing ivy around the windows, planting foliage in front of doors, and using colours from nature as camouflage. Well, above ground in our venue today is a mob who couldn't keep a low profile if they tried. It's GQT's 77th Squadron of Garden Aces. Let's climb back up those 76 steps and find them. There you are, that was quite a climb. We are upstairs in the lecture theatre at the Battle of Britain bunker with an audience of keen Uxbridge gardeners. Audience, let us welcome our GQT panel. They are plantsman Matt Biggs, houseplant queen Anne Swithenbank, and ethnobotanist James Wan. As some of you may know, Gardener's Question Time started back in 1947. And it was created really with the aim of encouraging us to dig for victory, quite appropriate given our location today, Matt. And this is an area you know a lot about.
Well, it's really fascinating because you think of Churchill as a wartime leader, but in 1918, he and Siegfried Sassoon, the war poet, were actually discussing war. And Churchill said, war is the natural occupation of man. War and gardening
And I think it would have been better if we'd have just stuck with the gardening, to be honest with you. I also did some research about some of the varieties, because I grew a whole bed full of varieties one year from Dig for Victory. So there was turnip, snowball, parsnip, tender and true, and January king cabbages. And then I was thinking about vegetables and thought, well, I wonder if there was anything to do with potatoes. And I found that the Germans has used biological warfare, and they dropped Colorado beetles on the Isle of Wight. But they were in boxes, they discovered, of 50. So when they went round and did the picking up, they realised that if they got 49, there was still one more to go. So there's a whole tie-up with not just growing here, but using pests as a weapon, comments about gardening as though it was such an important thing to do, feed the nation.
Absolutely, so far more ties between gardening and the war than we perhaps might first have thought. I don't know if we'll get any Grow Your Own questions today, we will see. But later in the programme, Matt will be taking us to a place he knows very well, a place that tends to its plants as well as its patients. That is coming up. But now I think we're ready for our first question.
I'm Penny Newman. How do you successfully take cuttings from a hydrangea?
Nice straightforward question. Cuttings, James, where's a good place to start?
Well, the good news is you started with perhaps the easiest of all plants in the known universe to take cuttings from.
Oh, hooray!
I'd say apart from, some of the things like devil's ivy, some of the arrowheads where you just cut them up and put them in water, hydrangeas will very often root just from a vase of flowers that you've just stuck in there. But perhaps the easiest way is to take off the flower itself, because it's going to be acting as a drain on the plant's resources. Take a section of probably about 20 centimeters long and put it in a pot of seed and cutting compost indoors. Even at this time of year it can work. Perhaps the easiest and best time is spring and early summer, but really you can't go wrong. And also, because the plant produces so much growth that you can use to make cuttings, you can try some now, you could try some again in the spring, you could try some more in the summer. I think you'll be overrun. It's really
Next year they'll be on show then.
It's not going to be a problem now.
No, probably not. I think you might have hydrangea paniculata, do you? Because you described it as having a tall pyramid-shaped flower.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they're quite as easy as the ordinary hydrangea macrophylla cultivars, which tend to be a bit sort of more green and sappy and more ready to go in the spring and summer. So as we're coming into the autumn, I think that you should try some hardwood cuttings, because you've got those long stems which would have flowers on, but if you can sacrifice one of them and cut sections, as we said, about 8 inches, 20 centimetres long would be good. And you could just put those into a pot or a trench in the ground. You'd be burying them by about 2/3 of their length, and to prepare them, you'd be putting under a node nice and straight and above a node on a slight angle, so that you can tell which way up they are. And just you do several of those, and they should root as hardwood cuttings, I would say. But in the summer you could do some semi-hardwood cuttings as well.
Any tips from you, Mark?
Well, just a quick pitch for an interesting variety with an awful name, and it's called Pinky Winky. You can imagine what shape it is. But it's
I'm not sure what to think about that, Matt.
but it's a gorgeous head, which is sort of rounded, triangular shape, and produces masses and masses of these really incredible pink flowers that sort of tumble out of the borders. So in fact, you either put it at the back, tumble it over something low, or I think even more amazingly, stick it towards the front of the border, and people are just amazed by this huge pink cloud. But it's the most awful name, but a fantastic plant.
Oh, thank you.
One to
Thank
look
you
out
very
for.
much. Yeah,
Thanks,
great.
Penny.
Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question.
Hello, I'm Ziza Gray. I'd just like to know how to get rid of mealybug and my cacti and succulents. They live my life.
Is this a long-term problem that you've had, Aziza, or just this
Off and
year?
on, yes.
Okay, mealybug on the cacti and succulents and Swithin Bank. What can we do?
All sorts of grimacing
You are.
faces, because it's so horrible when they get them. Are they above ground mealybug or
Yes.
root mealybug?
Oh no, not root mealybug.
Well, I think root mealybug are almost worse because they're so hard to get rid of. But the above ground ones are almost as bad. And of course, we're talking about those funny little sort of long-bodied, pinky, grey, tiny insects that cover themselves in a kind of white fluff.
That's the ones.
That's the ones, and they have their egg clusters in there as well. And they seem able to kind of drift around, so you might get a plant and it might seem to have nothing on it at all. But if you've got another plant in the house that's got mealybug, the air currents almost seem to arrive with them on board, ready to infest your plants. So the care of getting rid of them, if you've got a plant that's really infested, I would consider pruning it first, if it's a prunable type. And then it's just patience, really. There are various sprays out there that are sort of safe to use, more natural sprays. But what you need to do with them is you need to spray them on quite hard, and then the next day come back again, because the first spray breaks down that horrible coating, and the second spray might actually get to the insect underneath.
All right. Is there anything you might do for prevention, James?
I don't think there is a huge amount you can do for prevention other than quarantining new plants when you get them, which I don't think almost anyone does with houseplants, but it's really important because unlike in an outdoor ecosystem where there are predators kicking around, with indoor plants, you only have to get 1 or 2 pests, and some of them can reproduce by parthenogenesis, so they don't need 2 partners, they can literally just clone themselves, things like aphids. And once they're in, they can really just wreak havoc because there's nothing that controls them. They're almost on a perfect island that's sealed in and nice and warm, no frost, no predators. They can really go crazy. So other than doing that, well, what I would suggest is if you're trying to get in nooks and crannies, with cacti, which can be quite tricky, especially the woolly types or the really spiny ones, using some cotton buds, soaking it in the solution that I mentioned, and then just really getting in each crevice. If you've got small plants, that's going to work. If you've got, 6 foot high one, it might require lots of patience.
Good options there, Aziza. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's move along.
Oh, hello, panel. I'm Marilyn Saxter from Weebray Allotment Society in Leicester. I have 2 mature blueberry bushes in pots, but now wish to move them to my allotment plot, which has primarily clay-based soil. What advice can the panel give me, please, when transplanting my blueberry bushes?
Okay, moving them to the allotment. Matt Biggs.
Can I ask what size they are? How big?
So from the ground, they're probably about 3 feet high.
Right, so they've been in there.
They're about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay. So give them a thorough watering with rainwater during the dormant period between October and March when they're asleep. Ease them out of the pot, and then dig a hole around about the same size to slot them in. Tease out the roots so that they'll grow out. But before doing all that, you need to have tested the pH because they like acidic soil, and if you're on alkaline soil, then they just won't fall. So test the pH of the soil first to see whether you can move them. If you can move them, then do so. If not, pop them into a pot 1 size large using peat-free ericaceous compost. If they do have to make the move and everything is okay, do them during the dormant period. Take as much of the root ball as possible with them, tease the roots out, dig in some well or potted organic matter, plant them slightly on the mound because